Stalker here. So I thought I'd talk to you about the one time I bothered to go to a season ending race banquet. You know, where they handed out the trophies and prizes to the champions, and basically everybody kicked back and partied because the race season was over for 5 or 6 months. Well, this was late October, and I thought it was kind of weird that we were actually racing into late October, because October is pretty sketchy for weather, and it was pretty well right. So we actually had a race weekend that consisted of Friday, Saturday. There was no Sunday racing. So we went out to the track, and we basically qualified on Saturday, or sorry, you qualified Saturday morning, raced in Saturday afternoon, and the banquet actually happened Saturday night. And the interesting thing is that it was a horrible weekend. It poured down rain. I didn't actually go by myself. I ended up getting talked to going with a bunch of guys because I knew the weather was going to suck, and I said, well, we'll book a hotel. So we actually stayed at a hotel on Friday night and on Saturday night, so that we wouldn't be caught in the rain like some of the people who were camping were. And yeah, it was pretty miserable. The racetrack we raced at was called Shannon Valley Motorsport Park. It's near Belleville, Ontario. It originally was a club circuit. It got extended into like a I wouldn't call it a MotoGP level circuit, but it's sort of like what would have been at the time like a barely World Superbike type racetrack. You know, maybe AMA Superbike. But that just happens to be, you know, that's what it was back in the 80s. But anyways, the whole weekend it rained, and the one thing Shannonville is famous for when it rains is they have a lot of worms in the ground, and because there is a very thin layer of dirt with you know, rock or Canadian shield underneath it, the dirt area floods out pretty quick, so the worms actually climb out of, or worm their way out of the ground and lay on the asphalt, because the worms actually breathe through their bodies. So you'd be coming around a corner and there'd be like 50 worms laying around in the corner as you're leaned over on your dragging your knee. Which, in case you're wondering, one worm is not very slippery. 50 worms is, well, you might as well just hit oil. So we were sort of tiptoeing around certain corners because of the massive amount of worms, but overall the weekend was okay. None of us actually crashed. We all finished acceptable for conditions in our races, and we then packed up because we had to get back to our hotel, and then we were going to get all cleaned up and dressed up to go to the banquet. So the bikes were all loaded in an open trailer. It was like a 5 by, I'm gonna say a 5 by 8 foot trailer, and there was like, I think there was 3 or 4 bikes in there, plus, you know, all the tools and gears and stuff like that. They had a great big blue tarp over top of everything to try to keep things reasonably dry and keep things from falling out. And we're driving back to Belleville, which was our where our hotel was, and we're about 5 miles from the hotel, and all of a sudden, bang, the wheel falls off the trailer. And so, you know, a lot of yelling and screaming and freaking as we managed to get off to the side of the road and not wipe out or have the trailer flip over. And we then went to look off into the weeds to see where the damn wheel went, because of course it was a borrowed trailer and we didn't have a spare. And we took about 45 minutes. We finally found the wheel, and then we looked at the wheel, and the wheel was completely shredded. Apparently what happened was the wheel had not been bolted on properly. There was only, you know, I guess the wheel nuts were not very tight, and the wheel had come off, and then it had, when it came off, it actually hit the fender, and the fender was like a heavy gauge sort of steel, and it basically sliced right through the tire to the rim, so the tire was pretty well fried. We basically had to steal a couple wheel lugs from the other side of the vehicle, and you know, put it on the wheel that was flat. And of course, this is a Saturday night, and it's not like you have the 24-hour towing services like we have today, so we had to drive the last 5 miles with the trailer off on the gravel shoulder, so it wouldn't like completely apart on the asphalt, as we were driving really slow, and got to the hotel. So we got there, we got cleaned up, we went to the banquet, and excuse me, and then we proceeded to have the party. And the banquet was like a typical banquet. Everyone was out there. You know, the organizers made speeches, the riders made speeches. There was a lot of music, a little bit of dancing, and a lot of drinking, and a lot of smoking of these very strange smelling cigarettes, if you get my drift. And again, this was back in the 80s when you could smoke everywhere. So the interesting part was it was funny. My one buddy, who's also Irish, was there, and he'd be standing there talking to people, and he was a drinker. He could outdrink almost everybody I knew. And the interesting part was he was standing there, and everybody figured he was about to fall over, but he'd like lean, he'd sort of almost fall forward, almost fall back, and he talked to you like carrying on a normal conversation, and you didn't really hear much of what he said, because you thought he was going to fall flat on his face or fall back on his head. And he never did fall. And I was talking to his brother afterwards. He says, "Oh yeah, he's not even drunk. When he stops talking, that's when he's really drunk." It's like, oh. And it was really funny. The guy who won like 4 or 5 championships that year was a French-Canadian guy, a really nice guy. Actually was one of my instructors when I got my racing license. And the interesting part was, he was incredibly funny when he was drunk. Like he was a nice enough guy, but pretty quiet. But once he had a few drinks in him, he was hilarious. And you know, of course, the thing about French Canadians, when they speak English, they you know, they normally speak with a mild French accent, but usually not too bad. But once they've had a few, it becomes a lot of this and that and does and dillies, deem and does and all that sort of stuff. And like my brother-in-law is French Canadian. He does the exact same thing, and it's pretty funny, because you know, you just see somebody's different personality once they've had a few. But you know, we partied into the night. I ended up driving home because I don't drink, and I got us home and got all the drunks back to bed. The next morning we had to get up and phone around, and again, back then we had no Sunday shopping, so almost everything was closed, and had to call a towing service, and we actually had to buy a little dolly wheel, which is what they use to tow, like to pick cars off the ground, and to tow them. And because that was the same type of wheels our trailer, and it cost us like $100, which is ridiculous, because you could buy them for like $40 at any store. And from there we bolted it on the trailer and made our way home. And that was pretty much the one banquet I went to, and actually it was the only banquet I went to, because after that I'm not even certain they were having banquets after races anymore. So anyways, I hope you found that interesting. DeathsStalker signing off.